Welcome back, dear friends, to Turkish series stars, the warm little corner where we savor the nuances, chase the echoes, and linger in those soft in-between moments that everyone else scrolls past. Before we set sail on today's whisper-soaked voyage, make sure you're subscribed, tap that like, and, if you want to help keep this space glowing, consider joining as a member to support our growing community. Settle in, breathe, and let's trace a story that isn't loud, yet somehow resounds everywhere it touches. This chapter begins with a line so stripped of decoration it almost felt like a joke shared under the breath, "I don't know." Spoken by Barış Baktas with the steady poise he carries like a second skin, the words landed gently and then ran outward like ripples changing the shape of a quiet lake. It was the kind of measured response that looked like a period at the end of a restless paragraph. Yet it behaved like the start of a new one. Rather than closing the subject, those three small words seemed to unlock a door many thought had been locked from the inside. No one believes Barış doesn't understand the weight of names and history. He is far too attentive, too precise. He knows exactly who Yağmur Yüksel is in the tapestry of his life. None of this could be an oversight. What he seemed to deflect was the hum rising beneath the surface. That sense of something warm finding its way back into the room, that slow alignment you feel before you can name it, that hint of a kindling that was never entirely extinguished. He tried to nudge the sparks back under the ash with a casual answer. Instead, they caught a fresh breeze. Then came the simplest modern admission, a fingertips confession. A follow. A small, nearly weightless action that, in our era of coded gestures, tolls like a bell when placed in the right context. Barış began following the new lifestyle account that Yağmur had launched with almost no fanfare. On it, she films not the spectacular but the still, a cup steaming at sunrise, a corner of a room where the light lingers as if it has a crush, quiet interiors that feel like they're listening. Even that tender, ordinary gesture became a spark in the dry grass of the internet, and the flames climbed fast. Comment sections turned into improvised detective bureaus. Fans arrived with magnifying glasses you can't buy, sharpening their vision with desire and memory. Threads multiplied overnight. Edits bloomed like wildflowers that ignore where the pavement begins. Every frame got parsed the way a stargazer studies a peculiar constellation, over and over, searching for the story written between the points of light. And the chorus began, classic Barış. He always leaves a breadcrumb. Coincidence? You're kidding. Then, a glint. Not a shout. A shimmer. A ring. On a day that looked quiet from the outside, with Yağmur strolling through her home wrapped in soft glow, a band of metal appeared on her finger as if it had been sitting there forever, waiting to be noticed. It was simple, restrained, barely asserting itself, yet the internet, allergic to silence, amplified it instantly. Screens lit up, fingers froze the frame, shadows were brightened, pixels got stretched until they whispered their last secrets. That ring became a specimen in a laboratory built from curiosity and caffeine. Theories burst across platforms. TikTok spun stories, Instagram curated side-by-side exhibits, and Twitter, ever the world's sleepless newsroom, hosted a panel of romantics, skeptics, and seasoned watchers. People compared tabletops, traced plant leaves, and studied reflections in any glass surface that might confess something it wasn't meant to. Arguments were made about marble veins the way researchers bicker about artifacts. A countertop that resembled one from Barış's world sparked confident declarations. A chair akin to one in Yağmur's photos drew counterclaims. When both scenes felt familiar, the verdicts grew bolder, were beyond coincidence. And then came a still image that hovered without context, landing as softly as a feather and hitting as hard as a drum. No tags to steer the eye, no caption to frame the meaning. Just two people sitting shoulder to shoulder with unteachable ease. Barış wore that drowsy smile like the morning after a long conversation. Yağmur looked caught and content in a moment that neither hid nor announced itself. And yes, the ring showed up again, humming rather than singing, visible but not loud, as if it had nothing to prove and everything to confirm. If you've been watching them for long, it felt like a familiar choreography. Barış avoids theatrics like he's allergic. He declines to juggle for attention, refuses to beg clarity from a crowd, until he drops a single detail so heavy it redraws the horizon. His message is consistent: he won't turn life into a stage, but he won't go underground either. Yağmur has a different grammar. She doesn't explain, she brightens. She relies on light and texture, on glimpses that say more than a press release ever could. She radiates what she won't define, and somehow the radiance is enough. Predictably, the audience split into their usual camps. The romantics started singing. They were always on a slow orbit back to each other. The careful realists raised an eyebrow. Isn't this a little fast? Between those poles stretched the true human terrain, curiosity, the exact force that keeps your eyes here a few seconds longer. What do you see? Is this the slow thaw of something timeless, or simply a collage of coincidences our shared hunger made into a story? Tell us what your heart is reading. And while you're diving into the comments, remember that you can keep Turkish series stars going strong by joining our membership. Your presence is the light in the windows of this house. The timeline, as murmured by those who listen closely, suggested both Barış and Yağmur had settled into a season of intention. For Barış, friends paint a portrait of a man choosing morning over midnight, sincerity over spectacle, and long conversations over loud rooms. For Yağmur, those close to her describe a new softness, a peace that doesn't announce itself so much as it stops bracing for impact. Taken together, the question rises: what if this isn't a fresh prologue, but a page that was folded neatly and reopened when the time felt right? A ring can be an accessory. It can be decoration, punctuation, or nothing at all. But when it shows up on a figure the public follows step by step, especially one half of a pairing that people have mapped obsessively, it rarely sits there without intention. When it appears not at a gala with cameras flashing, but from a room washed in everyday light, it becomes something else, a riddle looped around a finger. A truth wearing a costume so thin you can see its heartbeat through the fabric. The fan investigators kept working with a blend of humor and deep focus that felt almost tender. Angles of sunlight got compared like data points in a long-term study. Plants became recurring characters. Rugs and teapots were drafted into evidence. Screenshots were saved like exhibits in a case none of us officially agreed to try. And from this meticulous, slightly unhinged devotion, a gentler insight emerged. Authenticity leaves traces even when people try very carefully to wipe them away. That photograph, the one that arrived without instructions, felt like a breath escaping a closed room. Nothing about it looked choreographed. The way their bodies leaned, not dramatically but naturally. The relaxation in the shoulders, like two people who've forgotten to be careful. The glimmer in the eyes that only shows up when a private joke crosses the room. Through it all, Barış stayed consistent, resist performing, then let a single action speak for an entire monologue. And Yağmur kept doing what she does best, bring light where there were only questions, and watch the answers bloom without being named. Some call that destiny. Others swear by timing. I suspect the line runs between the two like a quiet path through a garden, close enough to notice, just far enough to protect. Which leads to the only question that matters: where do we drift from here? Is this a doorway we're just now noticing, or a familiar river bending back to the bed it always belonged to? If a fuller story wants to be told, it will arrive the way their moments always do. Calmly, maybe with another ring catching afternoon sun, or another softly lit photo that pretends to be incidental. And if the story chooses silence, we will still keep this season as a beautiful artifact, proof that 3 calm words, "I don't know," can hold a whole world still. As we near the end of today's tale, I want to turn the mirror gently back to you, our community, the heartbeat of this channel. Does this feel like an ending finally at peace, a beginning in bloom, or a quiet continuation we simply didn't name correctly before now? Would you like to see Barış Baktas and Yağmur Yüksel here on Turkish series stars one day, side by side on our couch, sipping something warm, and answering the questions only you would ask? If so, drop those questions below. Imagine 10 unhurried minutes, your curiosity on the table, a shared cup between you. What would you want to know? Before you go, don't forget to like, subscribe, and consider joining as a member if you want to help us keep making these slow, attentive dives into the stories that hum when the shouting stops. This has been Turkish Series Stars, and we'll be here waiting, ready to listen, when the next whisper decides it's time to speak.